Diaspora, a word describing the Jews outside of Israel, the exiled communities in Media, Babylon, and Mesopotamia. Centuries later, the Jewish diaspora formed the networks by which the news of the resurrection of Jesus was spread by Barnabas and Paul. Today, new diasporas are forming as people are pushed out of their home countries and pulled to the US, Canada, and Europe in hope of a better life. 50% of all diaspora peoples are Christians, 158 million people. These Christians don't see themselves primarily as migrants, but as those on mission. There are now 15,000 missionaries in the United Kingdom, almost all of them migrants, self-identifying as missionaries, heralding the good news to post-Christian Europe. Some have called this reverse mission, as Western countries that sent out missionaries over 100 years ago are now receiving missionaries from the countries they first sought to reach. This became very real to me in my hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I was invited to speak at a church that also hosted an Amharic-speaking Ethiopian church. That same week, Training Leaders International was sending 2 teams to Ethiopia to teach pastors how to preach and understand God's Word in Amharic. And there I was, 2 miles from our home office, meeting with Ethiopian pastors who led worship and preached in Amharic. The diaspora churches in the West are very similar to the global church, evangelistic, full of zeal, and with leaders who lack formal training. Training Leaders International now wants to come alongside these diaspora pastors and leaders, helping to start a movement of preaching workshops in order to empower diaspora pastors to better understand and faithfully preach God's Word to their people.
The reality of the diasporas in US and Canada, it's huge. Today, 14% of the US and 22% of Canada's are diaspora. So we have thinking about and we have planning about how can we better serve them. The Diaspora Church has some specific characteristics that is important to understand when we want to serve them. First, they love to worship in their own language. I can tell you about that because I'm from Brazil. I still love to worship in Portuguese. Second, they are not necessarily self-sustentable. We, the Western Church, needs to serve them. And third, they have the first, second, and third generation issues. First generation, the leaders are still in their home language involvement and cultural involvement. And a second generation, they have like 2 different cultures going on. And the third generation, they are Western already. So we need to do something to help the diaspora church to grow and be strengthened. TLI has a desire to serve the diaspora pastors and leaders. And how we want to do that is through a preaching workshop. We believe through the preaching workshop, we will start a healthy movement of brothers and sisters that will sit around the world and learn from it. So the idea is to study, to explain and apply the scriptures, so the pastors at the end of the preaching workshop, he's able to go to the pulpit next Sunday and use tools that's going to be really helpful for them. I'm from Brazil, so I'm so thankful for the Western missionaries that came to Brazil and brought us the gospel. That was so good. In the 40s or 30s, I don't remember exactly the date, we had a missionary who got a horse and got into the woods and found my grandpa and he spoke the gospel to him. So we are so thankful to them, and through my grandpa, the gospel came to our family. But at the same time, some of the missionaries that came to Brazil, they came with the mind of colonization, paternalization, so not empowering the locals to do the ministry. We didn't have a strong leadership. So that's something we need to worry about it. Not bringing something only to the diaspora church, something that we're gonna help them, but at the same time we're gonna empower them so they keep going doing the ministry of God. 5 years from now, I would love to see a healthy movement of diaspora pastors and leaders sitting around the world to learn to apply the scriptures in a way that can be faithful to the scriptures.